Oof. That all ended because she felt sorry for you. You act like prey, but you're a predator. You use pity to lure in your victims. It's how you survive.
Greetings, fellow mortals. Just a reminder saying it's just my opinion is for cowards. Recently, my wife and I have been watching the K-drama Love Next Door. It's a cute little show about two childhood friends moving back home and living next door again and falling in love. All the while focusing on the fun topics of grief, divorce, and cancer. You know, the typical things that you think about when you're watching a cute romance story. But that actually isn't the thing that got my interest at first. It was actually the dad character. At first, you might think that he's a bumbling fool, but as the show goes on, they show different sides of him. While he does lack business sense and is a bit naive, he is shown to be a good father and a hard-working man. He also has a strong sense of morality, loyalty, and love. And while he can be a bit goofy, he is overall a good person, a good man, and a good father. And at the end of his specific episode, I paused and asked, hey, why don't we have any of that in our goofy shows over here?
Yeah, that's one fine-looking barbecue pit. Why doesn't mine look like that?
And I'm not talking about serious dramas like Breaking Bad or The Sopranos. That's its own can of worms. I'm talking about our goofy sitcoms. But not gonna lie, this trope could in fact branch out into more serious shows where the dad is in fact a bumbling moron who just gets in the way of everything. Not to say that I want the dad to be the complete opposite, an all-knowing saint that can do no wrong and is never confused and is never worried about anything. We don't need to go back to the days of the Andy Griffith show. I remember back when I was in elementary and middle school, and sometimes we would have assemblies and the teachers would make us watch an episode of that show in order for us to learn some sort of lesson. Andy was always perfect. He was always just sweeping up the mess that everyone else foolishly made. And while the show was fine, there was nothing wrong with it. It wasn't all that interesting to me because he wasn't a real character. He wasn't a real person. Trust me, I have met my dad. He is a flawed human being, just like everyone else. Who do you think taught me to cuss like a sailor when building shelves or other furniture? It wasn't my mom, that's for sure.
Only I didn't say fudge.
I actually connected more with father characters in later shows in the 90s because they actually acted like real human beings. For example, Danny Tanner, Carl Winslow, and Uncle Phil. Who doesn't love those dad characters from those goofy shows? If someone came up to me and be like, oh, I don't really like Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince, I'd be like, what is wrong with you? There's no denying that they are a step up from the old trope of honor thy father because he is an all-knowing being. No, he's flawed like everyone else, but you should still respect him because he has a lot of knowledge that you don't. Unless your dad is a complete piece of shit. If that's the case, then you can just ignore that and just focus on the fictional aspect of this. There's no denying that 90s era of dad writing was peak. Even the example that I'm about to bring up, which I think brought about its downfall in the end.
I am honored and at the same time humiliated. So thank you and curse you.
And that, of course, is The Simpsons, the show that will never end until every voice actor involved inevitably dies. Now, this is in no way a criticism of the original Simpsons seasons. Those are great, along with other shows like Married with Children, where it is a parody of everyday life. Shows based on a completely flawed world with characters that are basically stereotypes turned up to 11. Each and every character is a joke in and of itself. The writers take a role and then they just go with it. They make fun of it in every single way possible, and there is no exceptions. At first, this type of parody and this type of joke was new, it was fresh, it was innovative because there had never been anything like it before. Remember, this was the 90s. It was a very different time back then. What you could watch was very limited. And back then, it was absolutely amazing. But there's a problem. You see, while Married with Children did end, The Simpsons did not.
Over and 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 over.
Okay, Clay, I get the point.
No, you don't!
You see, because The Simpsons is animated, the characters do not need to age with their real life actors. In fact, the voice actors can keep playing the same characters for as long as they're physically able to, or in some cases they could even be replaced. Meaning the status quo, which the sitcom holds completely sacred above all else, can always be the same no matter what happens. And because of The Simpsons' popularity, it's kept going and going and going and going and going until, oh God, what does it become? Writers can only do so much with the same exact characters without changing them at all. And then eventually the characters become parodies of themselves, so it becomes a parody of a parody, and the characters' main traits are brought to the forefront, and that defines who they are completely. And this process is known as flanderization.
Just let me die! Just let me die! Let me die in peace!
Ned Flanders, the religious guy next door. Overall, a good dude who loves his family, and eventually he just became a Bible-thumping parody of himself. And while he is one of the more prominent examples, it happened to basically every single character in The Simpsons, especially Homer. While always a dopey idiot, Homer was originally a loving father and husband who always tried his best for his family and sacrificed where he could. And now he's a lazy, hateful, alcoholic asshole who really doesn't have any positive qualities anymore. Same thing to Peter Griffin from Family Guy. Originally he started out loving his family, but now he's a sociopath that only views them as an anchor weighing him down. While writers can do whatever they want with fictional characters, I think almost everyone would agree that the early seasons of those shows are a lot better than the current stuff. They're still popular because they're coasting on their legacy that was made decades upon decades ago. At this point, they're going to go on forever, even long after the original creators and voice actors died, because the companies just won't let them go. And because those shows are popular, they make money. And because they make money, the corpos behind the scenes want more of it. Meaning they want a bunch of copycats, meaning everyone is forced to keep doing these same exact stupid flanderized tropes.
Why are you the way that you are? I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
With a notable exception, for the past 20 years, almost every single animated dad is either not there, a complete bumbling moron, or just completely evil. Or, if the dad is competent, then he is probably the only parent still alive or around. And I will get into the notable exception of the solo dad and Bob's Burgers later, don't worry. But for now, let's focus on the rule instead of the exceptions. From the Fairly Odd Parents, to the Amazing World of Gumball, to Phineas and Ferb, to South Park, to all of the various failed Fox projects, they all have the derpy dad. He might not be completely stupid in every single case, but I bet you that he's dumber than almost every other single character. Or at least when it comes to being a parent, it's apparent that he has no idea what he's doing. This cliche is absolutely everywhere. It's why I'm worried about the revival of King of the Hill, because Hank Hill was never like that. He didn't understand Bobby, but he wasn't a completely incompetent fool. But we'll see how things go now.
How does it feel to have lived long enough to see all of your favorite franchises go down in flames?
Feels great.
This cliche has even bled into live action sitcoms. I want you to think of your favorite show in this type of genre and wonder, hey, is this dad an idiot, or is he at least bad at being a dad? Even the shows that I enjoyed, like Blackish, Modern Family, The Goldbergs, Kim's Convenience, the dad is always the less competent parent by far. Whether there be a generation or a culture gap, there is a lot of issues with communication and with raising the children. Even someone like Phil Dunphy, who is probably the most positive representation of fatherhood in the modern era, is still a dope that needs his wife to do basic things with his family. Compare this to the 90s sitcom dads. Now, they did need help like any single parent would, but they were still good at taking care of the children and looking after their needs. This type of trope can even appear in more serious shows and movies. In fact, the only way that you can be completely sure that the father is going to be on the ball, he's going to love his kids, and he's going to know what he's doing is if he is a single father.
I'm not a thug, I'm police.
Okay, then name one law.
Don't kill people?
That's on me. I set the bar too low.
From Disney's Goofy to Beef Tobin from the Great North, in order for a father to be completely competent in everything from cooking to cleaning to raising the children, they have to be completely alone. The mom either needs to be dead or have left them. Only then can a dad possibly step up and be a good parent. Not only that, they can be fully flushed out human beings with flaws and desires of their own. Even then, there could be the issues of being too hard on the kid like in Psych, or needing a feminine touch around the house like in Despicable Me. But God forbid that we have a father figure who loves his wife and kids to death and will do anything for them and is completely competent around the house. All the while having unique stories, because raising a bunch of new human beings who really don't even understand themselves yet can be difficult. If only that formula was solved already.
Oh, it's so obvious. I would have never thought of that.
Besides the old examples, Bob's Burgers is probably one of the only few shows that does this right. Bob is a good husband, he's a good father, he's a good human being. Really, his biggest struggle is the fact that he is a small business owner who is trying to keep the boat afloat. Well, that, and he's surrounded by some of the strangest human beings that you will ever meet, including his own family. In a lot of ways, he is the straight man in the situation, the person reacting to the oddities around him. Bob and Linda work as a team. For the most part, he's competent in what he tries to do, and he's not a complete bumbling idiot all the time. He's not always the smartest person in the room, and he doesn't always know what to do, but he's going to try his best and figure it out and be there for his kids. So much so that Louise, his most independent and rebellious child, probably looks at him with more respect than anyone else in the show, other than herself. The show is so unique in this case that it stands out as a breath of fresh air even 15 seasons in.
Oh my God. I am never gonna financially recover from this.
And while I love the spin-off set in the same universe show, The Great North, there's no denying that it does the single father trope. So even among its own creators, Bob's Burgers still stands out as something unique, as something that stands above the rest. It's probably the only show with more than 10 seasons that I think shouldn't end, because I want it to be a positive influence on the shows around it. Look, if a show, if a movie, if a book, if a comic book has this type of trope, does it automatically mean that it's bad? No. It just means that the piece of art is using a cliche, a trope that is overused to the point that everyone is tired of it. Every single story that you have seen or heard has tropes in it. It is the building blocks of a tale. And some of them are used more than others. But when a trope is used so much that you can completely predict it without even thinking, it becomes a cliche. Other examples would be, oh wow, the main character is the chosen one, and there's a prophecy surrounding them.
This is quite a shock. On the other hand, it's not surprising in the least.
You can, in fact, use a cliche by tweaking it and reconstructing it. Bob is in fact a little derpy when it comes to running his business. But here's the thing, that's completely understandable, because there's nothing more difficult than getting a restaurant off the ground. You could go to Hollywood as an aspiring actor and probably have a better chance of getting in something than starting up a small restaurant and it continuing to be successful for a long period of time. So it makes perfect sense that Bob is struggling with his business, because guess what? Anyone would be. Or with the prophesized chosen one, you can play with it, make it different. Like for example, in my own books, the main character has a prophecy around her, but is predicting that she's going to be the world's greatest villain. In writing, nothing is ever completely unique, but the interesting aspect of it is twisting it in a way to make it different than anything that came before it.
But I can change, I can change. my promises, I swear it.
In fact, deconstructing a trope or twisting it can be pretty simple once you have some practice, but there are some reasons why this isn't happening. Number one is corpo mandate. Everyone in the entertainment industry looks at The Simpsons, looks at Family Guy, sees that and says, hey, we just need more of that so that we can have a forever show that makes a bunch of money. There's probably been a lot of shows that were pitched and were outright thrown out or twisted in a way to be completely different in order to fit into the already established mold. It makes sense when a company doesn't want to take unnecessary risk, but considering how many different shows have failed from trying to be like The Simpsons or be like Family Guy, they probably need to look at something like Bob's Burgers as a positive example about where to go. Until there's more Bob's Burgers out there, they're gonna keep trying to do the flanderized version of The Simpsons. You could look up any random CEO or executive, and I can guarantee you they're as big of an idiot as any of these stupid sitcom dads are.
What's going on? Why don't they like it? We spent $250 million on this.
But outside of corpo influence, another reason you might see this cliche being used is because a writer is new. Someone without a lot of experience in writing is going to rely a lot on common tropes and old cliches because they haven't found their voice yet, and that's okay. But if someone is writing for TV or for movies, there might be an issue. They need to get better fast in comparison to the third option as to why this cliche might pop up. The writers involved are lazy and don't care. Don't think that writing a script for a movie or television show is a dream job for whoever is behind it. If the writer isn't invested, if they don't care, then they could be phoning it in just as much as anyone else at any job. You think that everyone behind the scenes at Family Guy and The Simpsons actually care about shows that should have ended 10 years ago? They are definitely in it for a paycheck. Which, I can respect needing the money in some part, but the phoning it in with writing part, that's what gets under my skin.
I can excuse racism, but I draw the line at animal cruelty.
You can excuse racism. So...
Number 4 could be that the writer involved behind the scenes is in fact dealing with their own problems and taking it out on the story. A lot of mommy and daddy issues out there, and a lot of people who would prefer to deal with it by writing instead of, actually going to therapy. Don't let anyone in a creative field lie to your face by saying, what I write doesn't say anything about me. No, it does. A piece of art can't simultaneously be something from deep within your soul and say nothing about you. It is, in fact, what you're thinking about on a regular basis. And number 5 is that someone behind the scenes could possibly be trying to maliciously ruin the project, but I find that highly unlikely. If you ever see a mistake or a flaw in something, you should probably chalk it up to someone being incompetent rather than malicious. A lot of stupid people out there in a lot of different professions, including healthcare and law. Isn't that scary? So let me tell you that artists are not any different. There are a bunch of idiots out there.
Did you ever notice that? How many really stupid people you run into during the day?
But what's the point of this video besides complaining about this cliche and wanting The Simpsons to mercifully die already? Well, it's to point out that every single sentence that you hear or see in any story has been thought out thoroughly. You can multiply the time that you put into any piece of entertainment by 100, and that's the amount of time that the people behind the scenes have worked on it. Everything that you see in movies, in shows, in books, and any form of entertainment has a lot of effort put into it. There's a reason that things are the way that they are. People are making terrible copies of decayed corpses of parodies and thinking that they're doing a good job. This is about informing you why this trope exists and why it's used, so you can better understand about why you don't like certain things. Next time you see or hear the cliche of the bumbling terrible dad, I want you to laugh because the people behind the scenes think that they did a good job. Meanwhile, they just served you up a big old pile.
Well, that sucks.
Not to say that I think that any piece of art should be censored or that people should be fired. I would prefer people to be better at their jobs, and a part of that is criticizing them when they don't do their best work. Stories of parents and children struggling to understand each other is as old as time and will continue to be told. But maybe we shouldn't make an idiotic straw man punching bag out of one side of the argument. Fathers are people too. They have their strengths, they have their weaknesses. There are good dads, there are bad dads. And if you want to tell a story about a bad father, that is completely okay. That's great, actually. That could very well connect with and help a lot of people. But avoid the cliches, because then it just falls apart into a parody of itself, just like The Simpsons. And you don't want to be like The Simpsons in the year of our Lord 2025. And if you're telling a story about everyday life with families, maybe don't make fatherhood look like a complete joke where you don't have to try, because guess what? That doesn't help anyone. It makes fatherhood look dumb, foolish, and a waste of time to possible young parents, and also sets a very low bar for dads. Maybe set the bar a little bit higher from now on. We don't have to go back to the Andy Griffith all-knowing, perfect father figure who can do no wrong, but can we at least go back to the 90s where the fathers were good, real people who loved their families? Come on, Uncle Phil, that's all I'm saying, he's the best. But what do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Have you thought of things that I might not have considered? Please leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, if you disagree with everything I have to say, that is perfectly fine. After all, everyone is entitled to their objectively wrong opinion.
And I'm having a whole bunch of kids. I'm gonna be a better father than he ever was. And I sure as hell don't need him for that, because ain't a damn thing he could ever teach me about how to love my kids.
Thank you all so much for watching.
You're still here?
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. You bye. Boom.
Do not despair.